winter comes so we can look forward to spring, and then spring comes, it's summer, and it just changes. The only guarantee we have is that it will change. So same with faith.
You're listening to another episode of Faith Deficit, a weekly program that explores individual stories of faith in an increasingly secular world. My guest today is Anusree Roy. She's an Indo-Canadian award-winning playwright, actress, and librettist who emigrated to Canada with her family at age 17. You might know her work, Pyaasa, Letters to My Grandmother, Roshni, Brothel No. 9, and her latest play is Little, Pretty, and the Exceptional. Or you might have seen her work as Nurse Patel on Remedy. Or you might just know her by her incredible voice. Either way, thank you for being on the program. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Good.
So thanks so much. I wanted to just get started with how you were raised. Like, what was your experience with faith at an early age?
I would say I didn't even know that I was deeply raised with faith until I moved to this country when I was 17. And I realized that's not the norm. I was like, I just thought everybody was raised in a faith environment as I was, because that's just what you think when you're a kid. And when you kind of go to another country, you're like, oh, wow, this is not how it is done all over everywhere. But I was raised in a family that believed in God, And I prayed every day, and I still do. And we visited the temple almost every day. It was down the street. And prayer songs, belief, faith, and higher universe, and asking for things and giving gratitude, offering gratitude in terms of, with things or with prayers or hymns, songs. It was a big part of my life, my whole life. Mm-hmm.
Right. So when you say you believed in God, so is this a Christian God? Was this I'm not going to presume the background?
It's a Hindu. I'm from the Hindu religion. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I thought it might be Hindu, but then you said only one God.
I know,
like, this shows my ignorance.
Hinduism. Yes, you're absolutely right. So you're not at all ignorant at all. But so Hinduism does have over, 30,000 gods. I don't know how many, just many, many, many. I'm pulling out an arbitrary number. Many gods in my religion. And one of the things that I love about my religion is you don't have to commit to one God, because there's different gods for different things. You could pray to Ma Saraswati if you're a student and you're going an exam. She's the goddess of books and education. You can pray to Ma Lokhi for financial situation. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of flex and liberty to which God you're going to pray to. And usually how it works is, at least in my community, is one, a family is going to have a God that they really believe in, but you're more than welcome to branch out or choose other gods and whatever you do. And we celebrate each god's event, and we go to a prayer for each. So if Ganesh has an event, we'll go. If Lord Shiva has an event, we'll go. You know what I mean? So you mark kind of the big gods, but there's many, 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 many gods in my religion. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, so you're polytheistic. So does it, is it something that you believe in terms of every different, how does it manifest in terms of the way you think the world works? Do you know what I mean? Or do you feel like there are sort of anthropomorphized gods that exist somewhere out there? Is there something more general that you would say you were raised believing?
I think in my mind, I don't have all the answers. I'm not even sure, but I think in my mind, there, it's a big, vast universe with, many gods from many religions out there watching over you and taking care of you, and you can relate to whatever, you know what I mean? In my religion, we do believe that Allah exists from another religion. We do believe that Jesus existed. Do you know what I mean? There's no going your God is wrong and mine is right. Absolutely not. Right. It's okay, sure. You also have a God. Great. We have many. And that's, you know what I mean? There's a huge openness to other people's faiths, other people's beliefs, other people's religions. And in my mind, there's Earth and there's planets, there's universes and galaxies and many, many things. And in the black void of it, there sits the gods in their thrones and or whatever they sit on, and they're doing their thing and they're sending us energy and they have a higher power. I think that's how I think, you know. I've never had this incredible, that's the reason I wanted to do it. I was like, no one's ever asked me to talk about my faith. What are you talking about? Yeah, we don't do that here. This is so great. So that's why I wanted to do it. But I think in my head, that's how it works.
It's interesting because I know in your work you tackle the caste system, and my question, I guess, is: are you sort of questioning that system through your work, or are you trying to make us aware as audiences about some of the elements of the system, if that makes sense?
Yes, and it's a brilliant question. I've never been asked that before. So I'm not questioning that system even in the least through my work, simply because I'm very certain of how I feel about it. It's absolutely wrong. The caste system should not be practiced, was abolished by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar constitutionally many, many years ago, absolutely 100% still practiced. No questions about it. I know this through my own lived experience. My family still lives in India, many of whom still practice it. So it is a thing that is out there, and it is a thing that is true. So I am not questioning it. What I'm perturbed by it is it's its existence in the world as it is today without it having any consequences for many, many areas in India. This is not to say, I just want to say a PS to this. Yeah. I feel very passionate about this, as you can tell, but this is not to say that India has not progressed. There are multimillionaires, multi-billionaires that live in India that are making incredible changes in the society, that are making incredible transitions in the society, along with feminism is on the rise. Women are working. I have some incredible cousins who are journalists, who are performance artists, who are doctors, who are nurses, who all of it, they're contributing to society in a very equal way. And they work with many people from different castes as well right now. So there's many changes that has happened. However, has it totally eradicated? No. So where my faith piece comes into it is this was started a long, long time ago. And many people, I'm sure people will contradict it, that listen to it, that understand the Gita, our holy book, a lot better than I do. But from my understanding, it was started in a way to separate the society. So it would be like, Josh, you and your family are responsible for agriculture. My family is going to be responsible for, building houses. Your brother's family is going to be responsible for doing the prayer for the community. So it was in a way to structure the community where everybody was divided into job categories or groups where you were assigned a thing. That's from my understanding. That's what I was raised in my family to believe. However, we as human beings came along and we evolved, and because we are complicated, selfish people, we made that into a very, very big thing that in turn turned into this, way of judging and prejudice and hatred that it turned into, Right. I absolutely 100% think it's wrong. I do not practice it. I used to practice it, as I very openly have talked about in Pyaasa, because that was the family I was raised in. And when I moved to Canada, I realized the reality of life, and people are just people. And I myself had so much discrimination against me is when as a woman of color, and 9/11 was really hard on my family, is when I went, oh, right, this is what it actually means like when you are judged by a section of society,
And it's interesting too, because not to cut you off, but I feel like that idea of creating a society where everyone has a specific role in this society, or something where we have some sort of teleological purpose, like an acorn becomes a tree. You know what I mean? This person's born to become a blacksmith. Like it runs throughout a lot of different cultural. You can see it to some extent with people like Confucius. You can see it to some extent in some Jewish tradition. I'm Jewish, but I feel like there's an element of it that what's interesting to me is that there's an element of it that is there's an element of it that intertwines with the faith, and then you almost have to pick it apart again, to sort of say, well, this faith, this belief system resonates with me, but this aspect of it, this political side or this social prescription, doesn't resonate. Does that make
Yeah,
sense? Like,
yeah, and that's how I think. It's become a big thing. When I was touring Pyaasa, I think it was in Kingston, where a patron said, "Shame on you for being religious when your religion um, involves things like this." And I remember thinking, but I don't agree with it. And then they said, yeah, but then you shouldn't be practicing. And I said, well,
right.
my religion also believes in goats' heads being cut in front of one of our goddesses Makali. Are they done? Do you do
Right.
that every day? I don't understand why you cannot pick and choose. I pick and choose members of my family that I choose to love and be deeply connected with. And there are some members of my family I just like and don't talk that much to. It's just the way the
Right.
world works. You don't have to say yes to every single thing that's presented to you just because you can't get out of it, or choose not to get out of
Yeah.
it. So I see faith as it, honestly, my belief system, my faith is very easy to me. It doesn't come with baggage. It doesn't come with guilt. I don't feel bad or burdened or anything by anything. For me, faith to me grounds me. It makes me a better human being. It gives me purpose. And it allows me to be grateful. That's it. That is what the measure of faith in my life is. I'm not guilted because of a lifestyle. Because I choose to live with my partner before I got married. You know what I mean? I'm not guilted because I decided to make certain lifestyle choices that are maybe not accurate according to some people. I'm not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My religion, to me, how I understand my faith, it is not burdened by anything. It's just very light, very open. The color of it is white, probably, if I were to give it a color. It feels like a feather. It allows me to be a whole human being, where gratitude is at the center.
Is that how you've always sort of felt about
I've
it?
always felt
like from a young age to so what was the kind of you went from living in a community, going to temple every day, presumably having a fairly close-knit community that you lived in, to coming to Canada, and there's I want to paraphrase what you said, but kind of this realization that you were different, that the thing that you did wasn't the thing that everyone here did. So how did you kind of reconcile that? What was was there something for you where you were like, well, I'm just me and that's what it is? Or did you try to sort of fit in and well, maybe I should go on Sunday? You're trying to understand a way to synthesize?
Two parts. One is I was very surprised that I have a really close friend who is a practicing Christian. And I found that out, I think, about 8 years into the friendship. And I mean, he goes to church every Sunday. He sings at church. 8 years into the friendship. And this guy is like a Jim Beam downing, chain smoking, rock and roll guy on the outside, in our business. And I love him. And this key part, and his faith wasn't an accident to him. His faith wasn't something that was imposed on him. It's a choice. Every Sunday he went, hungover or not. He showed up, he sang, he did his thing. He prayed every single day, he told me. This I found out while I was praying before a show out loud, and I was singing and really out loud singing my prayer songs. And he said, I just wish I could do that. And I said, what do you mean? And that's when we started talking. And I fell off the stage. I was like, well, I don't even believe you. I don't believe you. And he's like, yeah, what do you mean? And I said, so what do you mean? Why? And he's like, well, it's just it's not right in our country to be really open about faith. And I remember just being not stunned at that. I was stunned that that's what he identified as and never shared it. But I remember to my early days of coming to this country and being like, wow, people really have to work hard to not say I'm a Christian, I'm a Catholic, I'm a whatever they identify as. But later on as an adult, I realized, because it comes with a lot of baggage, it comes with a lot of things that happened, colonization, and it could go on, residential schooling, so much has happened. So I understand that the voice cannot be open, for many people. They feel repressed, oppressed as a result of the baggage of their religion. So I understand that now, right? So the second part of that, for me, to answer your second question, I've never felt muted with my faith. I've never felt to try to fit in. In fact, I felt the opposite because I think I got the advantage, unfortunately, a little bit racist advantage, that people think I'm very exotic, which obviously is quite racist. But people think, oh my God, how cool. They have like Shiva, and like they think about it like that. These like cool gods with their costumes and like 10 hands and 3 eyes. My God, that's so cool. So they would never dare insult my faith. So no one's ever, you know what I mean? So because it's this cool exotic thing. And I take advantage of that free pass I get. So I pray out loud at rehearsal. I sing my prayer songs out loud before a show. I bring pictures of my God and I put it up in my station in every single theater I've performed it, whether it's been at, you know, a theater center, at Factory, at Pesmarai, at, you know, Canadian Stage or Stratford Festival. I've done it every single time. And it's just who I am. It's what I am. Anybody that knows me knows that this is a key ingredient to working with me. It's just going to happen, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it does. And it's just taking back to the first part of the two-parter. Even when at the beginning, when I asked you, so are you, and then, you know, this part of me was like, I want to say Hindu, but then I don't want to assume. And then when I said Christian, I felt like this kind of awkwardness, like she's not being specific. So maybe I'm crossing a line. Like there's a really interesting thing, but then if you know, doing this show, it's like, well, we're just talking about what we personally believe. And there is something weirdly taboo about that, even though at the same time, like we're exposed, you know, I think of actors who thank God when they win an Oscar, or, you know, football players who, you know, pray before a game or whatever it is. Like we have this arm's length kind of relationship.
We have faith. God in our national anthem.
Right.
So there you go.
But then I can't imagine going to work and, I mean, unless it specifically comes out, like everyone's handing out holiday cards and they're like, what are you getting for Christmas? And I say, oh, like I'm Jewish. It doesn't really, it's not a thing for me. You know, like that's the only context I think of where like it would come up beyond like me talking to my friends. It's interesting because it is, even for me as someone who's, I would say, still kind of figuring things out, it's still a part of my identity, an important part of my identity, you know? So it is interesting that it so rarely comes up. It's such a thing that we like, we're so waspy or something. I don't know. We just can't talk about it.
I think it's the baggage. You know? I really do, you know. I think it's because of and that's completely somebody's perspective who was an outsider, but now identifies as Indo-Canadian, right. You know, which took me 6 years to actually identify as that. But it's such a, I really, really do. Like, I genuinely feel like it's this big thing where a burden that you have to bear, you know, where your religion has done some things that are not right, that are just not right, you know, but similarly, as has mine. Yeah. So I'm not going to pretend here saying my faith is perfect. Absolutely not. Like, no way it is, you know, I'm not perfect as a human being either, you know, so what does my faith serve me is all I have as an answer, you know, and that's all I have. Like, I don't have anything else, you know?
And we also, you know, it's I think the other thing I think that's really critical is the idea of context. Like, we were dropped in, you know, to our world, an imperfect world. We were dropped in, and now we live in it, right? And we participate in a variety of different philosophies and economic systems and, you know, social mores that we may or may not agree with, that may or may not be, you know, ethically sound. Like, you know, I drive a car to work, you know, like I live in a system that's, you know, I live in a sort of capitalist, sort of socialist hybrid system in Canada. You know, I live in a country that has a pretty dark history when it, like, as you mentioned, when it comes to residential schools and Aboriginal people. So I'm part of that. If I say I'm Canadian, then there is a part of me that's taking on that
absolutely,
legacy too.
You are. Right? As am I.
But at the same time, yeah, absolutely. Like, so, but at the same time, like, so what do we can, I still think that we can find our own nuance and draw our own context for how we go through the world, understanding that like this thing is part of my identity, but how I interpret it, how I take it in and send it back out is not like I have some ownership over that. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely makes sense. And I often say to Ryan, my partner, I often say to him, like, honestly, there's a part of me that wonders if I was ever a philosophy student, how I would score, because I often wonder, like, what am I even doing here? You know what I mean? Because none of it really, like, none of it, honestly, actually means something. Like, none of it means something. For a neuroscientist or a 35-year-old neuroscientist, woman of color, so who's also Indian, being in a magazine for neuroscience and being published in a paper and giving a lecture in Oxford means so much, and it means nothing to me, right? And writing an episode of television where the series star is a woman of color and it's my creation means everything to me, and it means nothing to the neuroscientist. So I often say to Ryan, it is the meaning, of course, that we give to something that actually means something, right? Like in everything, because I don't even know what the hell we're doing here. I'm just passing time. I don't know. Trying to, like, you know what I mean? Like,
but you're a part of a faith system that, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's, reincarnation is part of it. There's
so I better not screw up. Exactly.
Right.
So I better have like really good karma. And I go great lengths. I'm not even shitting you, but to like ensure my karma is right, Right. So but say my karma is crap and I come back as a fly. Well, that sucks for me, Or if this is my last birth and I've had such great karma up until then and I just like don't come back anymore, I become completely immortal because I've had I'm not completely immortal. What am I saying? I become there's a term for it. It's losing. I'm losing the term right now. Like when you're released from the cycle of
kind of like a nirvana or a
when you're released from the cycle and that's it. Like you don't come back again. Everybody hopes that that's their last life, right? If they live a good life, but I just feel like. I literally am like, I actually don't know what's going on. Like I'm hustling. These are my goals. I write them down every day. I pray every day. I wake up, I contribute to society, but like, I don't know what's going on. I don't even know what the hell we're doing, all of us here, but I think in my mind, while I'm here, I might as well contribute. I might as well be grateful. Yes. I might as well do something to pass the time. So we're glad I'm talented. I might as well make some art. And then when it'll be time to go, I'll go. Like, I don't know what else to say. You know what I mean? Like, I often wonder, do you wonder that?
All the time. I mean, but I do have a philosophy degree.
So oh my God. So tell me, what are we doing here? Tell me things.
It doesn't help me know what the meaning of life is. It just helps me ask the questions. Like what you're talking about is kind of, the idea of existentialism, right? Like we, in some larger, much, 5,000 mile view down at Earth, the whole planet is just a tiny blip. Yeah, it's a rock. It's a pebble in an infinite universe spinning through nothing. Eventually, the sun will explode. That'll be the end of us. And whatever symphonies people wrote and political change people had.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, we've been through like 7 extinction level events or something, right? So, I mean, we live in this. We assign great meaning to the smallest things in our lives, but fundamentally, like you said, I don't know how much it really matters to the longer universal perspective. But I also feel the same way you do, which is that, as long as we're here, we are here and we live here. And for instance, in my case, I have a tremendous amount of unearned privilege that I just have. I just have that. So how do I can choose to do anything, but I'd like to think that I use my time to help in some way or make a positive difference, even if I know that everything I do, all the change I could make could be like wiped out tomorrow. You know what I mean? And no one will ever know about it. But what else, like you said, what else are you going to do?
You're saying it will though. You're giving me a guarantee it will, or the sun will explode.
Right, right.
So like,
yeah.
So then, like, what's the point? I don't know. It's like amazes me sometimes. I'm like, I
Right.
sit here and I go like, okay, so I'm glad I identified that I have talent early on in my life that I can actually use to tell story, make a difference, but then like, I'll leave one day. The last person that remembers me on earth will leave. And then like, then what then? I don't know.
Right.
Then what are you doing all of it for? I just like find
Right.
it just
Right.
blows my brain.
I mean, you have a prodigious amount of work for someone who's like, I'm just doing stuff to pass the time.
No, but Josh, I'm telling you, this is not humility. I swear to
No,
God.
I know.
I actually don't feel that way on the inside. I really don't. I swear to God. Like, and I am humbled. Like, thank you, but I don't relate to that. Honest to God, I swear to God, I don't relate to it. I don't relate to what you're saying. For me, it's like, I'm not even at the tip of the iceberg for where I want to go. And then, there's 1,000 things I want to do. There's a million shows I want to write. There's a million shows I want to executive produce on television and share our people's stories. But then I go like, and a million more books I want to, there's just so much I want to write. And then I go like, oh my God, I'm really tired. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I'm tired. Like, and also after all that, what will it mean? I'm doing it because I know I have the craft and I have passion, but then like, when I think about what it means to anybody beyond me, it really doesn't mean anything to anybody, really, for sure. Not that neuroscientist, for sure.
I mean, I would make the case that your work has, really resonated with a lot of people who have audience members and actors and participants. Like, but we don't have to get into that. But I would just.
But do you understand what I'm saying? No, that's not what I'm just saying. Like in the grand scheme of life, where faith is so. Like, I don't know, we fight wars with faith. Like, I don't, and then you just go like, what did it ended up being? I'm not even sure,
Right.
That's
I do know what you mean.
Yeah.
I do know what you mean. And I think I do understand that. And that's something that I think is kind of the impetus for me doing this show too. Like, I don't necessarily know, like I'm still figuring out what my journey is, like where my kind of spiritual backbone lies, or what it is that kind of compels me to go forward. I think one thing that has been a comforting thought recently for me has been, I don't know if this is helpful at all, but the idea that that we I just lost it. The idea that I think we don't necessarily we look at other people who have had success, and it's one thing to look at, like, let's take Beyonce and say, oh, like she's incredibly successful. She's so far away from me that she could be like an angel flying in the sky, right? Like there's no, me and Beyonce are so different that I don't feel, but the people that I look at are people who are around my age, from my, background, who appear to have slightly more than me. I don't have kids, they have kids, or they're a little further ahead in their career. That kind of thing. I look at that and I say, oh, like, I just want to get there. Like, I just want to be that person. I see that how happy they seem to be, and then one thing I sort of realize is that like everyone is totally lost and clueless. Everyone I talk to, like their life is like a hair away from falling apart. And I'm like, okay, well, we're all just figuring it out. Like everyone is figuring out. There's something comforting for me about that we all just constantly are trying to understand what's going on. I think the other thing for me that helps is that thinking about, I feel good waking up and doing a little bit of work and going to bed and feeling like I did something that like mattered, even if it's a little bit. And that was good for today. I woke up, I did something today. Even just waking up sometimes and getting out of bed, getting dressed, taking a shower, that's an achievement for some people, right? And I think that, understanding it as like those little victories, I think has been really helpful for me, to find meaning in very small accomplishments. And then, what is a book or a play but a number of days where you've done a little bit of writing every day, and then at the end of it, oh, that's a book. That's a book that I wrote. Like, but every day was like, you might have an outline, you might have an idea of where it's going, but every day you do a little work. And then by the end of all the days, there's a book. The outcome is the result of daily practice and daily work. So for me, trying to find, I'm trying to pull myself back from needing to like look 10 years in the future and needing to be somewhere else. And I'm trying to just say my daily practice, my daily life, you know, getting up and not having a nervous breakdown, that in and of itself is a self-contained
oh my God,
victory.
Josh, teach me. All I do is 10 years down the line. All I do. I'm like, 10 years, where am I? Oh my God, I have so much more to
I
go.
know.
That's my whole life.
I know, but you know, yeah,
But,
I understand that.
But I also think, you know, as much as I'm being silly and funny, I also think our drives are what also defines us. And I think some people
absolutely
are really defined by that, which I know for sure I am. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even with this podcast, and I'm saying all of this to you as someone who is just also intensely neurotic. So it sounds like I've got it figured out. I don't. But even with this podcast, I'm like, who could I have on the show? You know, like who am I going to get? Like, you know, I have this idea that, you know, okay, well, once I really make it, then I'll be like, you know, I picture myself like at South by Southwest,
talking to Beyonce,
like a crowd of 5,000 people. I know Beyonce's on the show, and
why
you know,
not?
and we're like holding hands and Oprah's there.
Not?
Well, sure, but I mean, it's sure, absolutely. But I mean, but I guess for me, I can look at that, but I think I can't look so far that I neglect the things I need to do now, which is like, you know, make sure that every show I do with every guest I have is enlightening and important. And everyone I talk to has something incredible to share. And that's kind of, does that make sense? That's kind of where I need to keep bringing myself back. And that's like, again, another reason I really wanted to talk to you, because I feel like your perspective is really unique, you know, not just as someone who came here and has this deep faith practice, but also as a playwright and as an artist, you know, because I don't think there's a ton. I mean, I don't think there's a ton of Indo-Canadian playwrights out there. I
don't know if there's a lot of people that would identify as Indo-Canadian. That is right. There is a lot of Canadian playwright. I actually don't know. I can't give people's identification. I know a lot of women of color that are my girlfriends who also identify as, or their family identifies as Indian. I'm not sure what they would identify as. So it allows to have a close bond, but I'm not sure how many of them are faith-based though. So, but only because we don't talk about it. So I don't know.
Right. I mean, have you seen that change? Do you feel like there is more openness from when you started writing to now? For women of color, are the doors opening a little bit more?
Absolutely, 100%, absolutely. Only from two things. I would give it for two reasons. One, because we just like decided that our stories are important and started to self-produce, and that got the attention when the work was good, and it went from there. But also, I think now diversity is a buzzword that people do to look good. You know, they'll fix it in casting. Instead of casting plays written by diverse artists, the fix it in casting is you do another play written by a non-diverse person or non-diverse person, and you just fix it in casting. Then you cast a bunch of diverse people, you know what I mean, to make it work. But now there's a big change happening where diverse plays are getting done, also simply because diversity is cool to do at the moment, and which is slightly disheartening. But then the other school of argument is, but at least it's getting done, you know? So it's a very, very tricky balance for us, because I often get into conversations where people go, but you know why they're doing it, right? It's just doing it to checkmark the granting committee, or, you know, like it's not because they actually care. And then you get into these big debates, excuse me, some of which is true and some of which is not, you know?
It's interesting that you say this because, and this isn't, hopefully not to get too off track, but I was talking to a friend of mine, she's Pakistani. We were talking about the character Apu in The Simpsons and how it's there was a piece written about it, and they interviewed a lot of like comics, like who were saying, yeah, I watched that as a kid and I realized how incredibly racist that is. It's a real caricature, and talking about how that character, yes, The Simpsons has a number of different archetypes, but in particular because of how little people of Indian background were represented on TV. It was that much more meaningful to have this one character that was just such a broad stereotype. And so we were talking a little bit about whether, on the one hand, this character is just, kind of problematic. Although, of course, we grew up watching the show and didn't think about it at the time. But on the other hand, did in some weird kind of twisted way, did that character somehow open the door to eventually good stuff? Like, is Master of None in some strange way a byproduct of these caricature characters that, while they were deeply offensive, were also kind of had that kind of representation?
I don't know. What did your friend say?
What did we say? We don't know either.
Yeah, no. What did your friend say? Weren't you talking to your friend?
Yeah, she didn't know either. I mean, and I don't even know if that's the case. I mean, that might be totally wrong. I mean, it just feels, it's interesting to kind of, it's hard to go back in time and look at something and say, oh yeah, that is, you look at it and you're like, well, of course that is super racist. Like, how did this even get made? Right.
Yeah. I think the only thing that I don't watch Simpsons, so I can't. I've never seen a full episode. I obviously only know the person from the character from like my partner watches it, so I'll only know it from like the random clips, and I know certain catchphrase things. But I've never seen a full episode of Simpsons. People like me exist, which is shocking, I'm sure. But it's true. But I think the only problematic thing I find from that, if that is the case, if that is true, I don't know if it is true, but if it is true, the thing that I find problematic about that statement, and I hope that it is not true, simply because that takes a lot away from a Master of None who pioneered to get there, who has worked really hard to get there. Like I remember when I was first self-producing in 2006, it was hard. It was so hard. Like I just remember it being difficult. Like nobody wanted to read my things. I remember taking manila envelopes at Shoppers Drug Mart, and I would remember each manila envelope contained one script and one letter to all theater ADs, artistic directors, all across Canada, every theater I mailed it to. The bill was $86. I remember it because it was very difficult for me to pay. Yeah. I got multiple rejections and multiple no answers. One person wrote back to that many, $86 worth of mailing to ADs across Canada. One person wrote back saying that they were interested to talk to me, which was Iris Turcotte, with whom I've created so much work after that, So I remember just it being incredibly difficult. So what I find that it's a bit problematic, if that paved the way, then I'm not sure how I feel about that, because I feel it takes away from legitimate, pure voices that are making true, not racist art. Right. Although I genuinely can't comment on the show. I have not seen it, so I can't call it racist. Something I haven't seen other than hearing stereotype things. But I find that problematic, because then it takes away from the masters and pioneers like Ninali Aquino, or whatever it is in Hollywood terms, who has come forward and made that change happen and allowed for people to stand on their shoulders. Then I don't know. I somehow feel like, really, like that paved the way? I don't know. Although it may be true. I'm not sure. I don't have an answer.
What's, one thing that kind of came up in that discussion was, if that quote unquote paved the way, then it was because, the gatekeepers who are predominantly like white men, saw some kind of cash incentive to to invest more in like a certain type of program. You know what I mean? That's pretty much like as far as that possibly could go.
Yeah, but that's like they would see in investing programming that is like racist and inaccurate.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
which
so
I think is
more racist.
But I think that is what happened. I mean, I think you see, you know, and I'm not going to give examples, but I think that has happened. I think the shift that we've seen, like for a long time, I think a lot of programming has been based around stereotypes and broad caricatures for people of color, for gays and lesbians on TV. And I think that the difference from my perspective, and again, you can let me know what you think, but I think part of the difference is that the gatekeepers have changed, and there are people now in positions of power that are able to work with artists to create truly authentic work. I think Master of None happened in a platform like Netflix. It not that it had to happen with that platform, but like, you know, Aziz Ansari, like building his own audience as a stand-up, building his own capital as an entertainer, being able to leverage that capital to create a show. You know what I mean? Like other stand-ups following who are able to create their own identities, their own market, right? And be able to use that market. Directors and writers from different backgrounds who are able to work on these shows. Like, to me, it seems like all of that happening, and the gatekeepers changing. People not needing gatekeepers as much either. You know, to create their own web shows and like Insecure, the Issa Rae show. Is that right? So, I mean, people being able to like create their own art and not rely on the gatekeepers as much, I think has allowed people to create a huge multiplicity of work that's coming out in, say, the past 10 years that really maybe you couldn't have been able to do with huge movies or network TV. And to be honest, still isn't, you know, is still a challenge. And
it's such a strange thing. You know, often I find myself in conversations with my fellow women and men of color where we say to each other that unfortunately we find ourselves in a situation where I definitely feel this, that I'm not allowed to make a mistake.
Right.
Like everything I do, because I know the gatekeepers of certain Canadian Canadian theaters, that they happen to be my friends now. I'm not allowed to make a mistake. I'm not allowed to have a bad show. I'm not allowed to have a show that fails. Right. I'm not allowed to have a show that is a 1-star show because you are a woman of color. Your program work is finally getting done. 1 out of 5 people are 5 shows. Yours the only one that's colored show. Yeah. Well, it better be a hit. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that you go just like, why? If they can do another shitty Lear, why can't I do another shitty Midsummer Night's Dreams? Like, why can't mine be a bad play? Like, I don't have to have brilliant hits every single time. You know what I mean? Like, but we're not allowed. We are not allowed in some strange way because you have the pressure to like actually deliver, you know? Yeah. Because somehow somebody's listening, so don't screw it up.
Yeah. Yeah. You know? That's really interesting.
This is a total segue from our faith conversation though.
No, I know, but it's well, it is and it isn't, because I think, you know, the other sort of unspoken narrative is the idea of faith. I mean, I know Tyler Perry has like, he's sometimes a figure of mockery, and I get it. But at the same time, one thing he did was he spoke to an audience that was definitely not being spoken to. And it was an audience of folks who identified with his message and were people of faith. I mean, faith comes through in his work, whatever your feeling is on the quality of the work. I think that is clear that was something that, you know, you weren't seeing in, for instance, Hollywood, right? And that's one kind of thing I'm curious about. Like, is there a way to, is that kind of the new frontier, and not just like, budget movies that are, just like not very well done, but like really good work that explores that doesn't shy away from exploring faith in a real way. I don't know.
If something comes, I would write it.
Yeah. That's good to know.
But I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I think there's a market for it, because obviously I do think that, but I don't know.
Yeah. So the only other sort of thing I was wondering if I could pick your brain about is, so, you've tackled some pretty dark material in your work, but I also think you do it in a way that has some hope and some humor in it. And maybe that's just an element of who you are, someone who thinks about deep issues, but also, can find humor in stuff. I'm wondering if that also corresponds to your faith practice. If there's something, because that gives you this degree of comfort, you can explore those issues, but come back with a feeling of hope.
I think the reason my work has a lot of deep, dark things in it is because my life has had a lot of deep, dark things in it. I've had a lot of deep, dark things happen to me as a human being, whether it's in my childhood or my adolescence or my life as an adult, for which I've had to really, really, really go to the pit of my stomach to access my faith. Because my faith is so strong doesn't mean I have not asked God where he's been. Doesn't mean I have not said, why have you left me? Doesn't mean I have not said, I can't see you or feel you or access you because I'm in such grief that I cannot find you anymore. It doesn't mean I've not said any of those things. Just as much as I love my partner, Ryan, it does not mean that we don't get into intense debates about things that we're both passionate about. Both can coexist,
Right.
But the deep love has nothing to do with the passionate debates, or the passionate debates have nothing to do with it. They can coexist. So my faith, as strong as it is, has obviously absolutely gone through. I've never questioned my faith. I've never been like, oh, is God real? I've never done that. What I have gone is going, why have you left me? I don't feel you. I'm in so much pain. How could I be in this position of my life? Simply because I've faced so much deep, dark things, as have many other people. I'm not soliciting sympathy, but I'm just factually saying. But to answer the second point of it is, I think there has to be humor in someone's life in order to be able to see the contrast of what a humorless life looks like. So similarly, when I write something, the people that have struggled the most have the most humor in them in my shows, because they are able to access the beauty of life because they have seen so much pain, and I think that's just, for what it's worth, for good or for bad, that's just how my life has been. And I'm sure more is coming in the good and bad way, because life changes, and it's the most predictable thing about life is how unpredictable it is. So it's coming, and I know that. And I think, both has to be able to go in hand. So as I feel my characters feel that, and as do I. Absolutely. Because I think one can't just be, in every single thing. I remember when I was in treatment for PTSD, I was at my parents' house and just in a really dark place. And I was in my mom's bed, and she was kind of sitting on her side, and I was lying near my dad's side of the bed and just crying. And I remember saying, I just don't feel it. Like, I don't know where the gods went. I don't know why no one's holding my hand. I don't know why I'm in this deep dark of post-trauma. I was in therapy at the time. I was seeing two different therapists, one that wasn't working. The other one was very new and ended up being my therapist that helped me through it. But I remember going like, I don't know. And my mom just kept saying, it's just ebbs and flow, crest of a wave. Just have to trust it. You just have to trust. And I go, it's easy for you to say. I can't, I don't want to ride these waves that have been given to me. Like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I'm in pain, physical and mental, to have a mental health problem is a big thing, when you're, it's big anytime, but also it's a big thing when you're a writer, simply because your life is so solitary, but I remember saying to my mom, I don't know what's going on. Because the gods have left me. And I remember her saying, it's a wave, it's life. You have, your crescents and your flows and your ebbs and your flows. You just have to trust that, but I think the joy is back in my life, and again, it'll go. I'm sure of it. I know it from anything I learned in 35 years. I know it'll go, and then it'll be back, only to come back again, just like seasons. If you think about it as seasons, winter comes, so we can look forward to spring, and then spring comes, it's summer, and it just changes. The only guarantee we have is that it will change. So same with faith. Sometimes you feel it's not at all there. Although I don't question my gods not being there for me. I just don't know where they go sometimes when I'm in crisis. And then other times it's in bloom, which is right now, it's in full bloom. My full faith, everything is grounded, rooted. I feel it. My third eye is open. I feel the energy. I feel all of it, and I just hope that when it goes, that it does come back to me. I really hope that it comes back to me in time before it's too much,
Yeah. That's a really wonderful thought that things can always change. If someone is wrestling with depression or other mental health issues, just knowing that things change.
It was my greatest learning when I was in the midst of PTSD. It really was. 1.5 years of therapy. It was my greatest learning, where I really did not know, because I never faced something so big, but I did not know that, and it sounds ridiculous now, but it does. I mean, I take that back. I shouldn't judge myself for what I didn't know before. How can I know that?
Right.
I really didn't know that life changes like that, because I did not have a lived experience of that. My partner went through cancer in his life, and obviously he survived. He's in remission, and from him I have learned his attitude towards life. He takes everything in stride, he's very able to manage emotions very kind of, it doesn't cut to his soul, unless it does. For me, everything cuts my soul. But I also had to just go, why am I like that? I really think it's because I'm a writer. I truly, deeply feel for people, for things, for inanimate objects, for, arguments or love, or for me, everything has deep passion in it, whether I'm arguing about faith or where I'm exploring your idea of the meaning of life, and I'm going, tell me, like, everything is filled with passion. I think because it's just who I am as a human being, it's always high voltage. So for someone like that, when you question your faith, and then you come to the realization that it does change. And I know I will be met with grief all over again, where I will, in later years, if we talk, I'll say to you, I was wrong about the depths of darkness. This is darker and this is deeper. And I know, again, from what I have learned now, is I will come out of it. I know that, I witnessed a really close person in my life who lost their child last year, and witnessing their relationship. I'm just being very selective with my words. I'm being respectful. Witnessing their relationship with the loss of their child.
Yeah.
And that loss became a person. I felt like, and they would describe it, that the loss was living with them as a human being, and then watching them lose their faith and then gaining it back, and then the person slowly leaving them, and then having a new life. She now has a baby, a 4-month-old baby, who's very happy, healthy, wealthy. Everything is good. But watching that transition and the faith piece being in constant question, but now watching the faith come back, and again, like me, as I am in this stage in my life today, as I can only speak for today, it's in full bloom, So it comes and goes is all I know.
Yeah. That's real. Yeah.
And whenever it goes, may it come back again. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, I can't think of a better way to end this conversation. Thank you so much.
I do not want this to end. May all my podcasts be about such subjects that I'm so deeply interested and invested in. Oh my God, I had such a good time speaking with you.
Oh gosh, me too.
May we talk again in 10 years.
Oh yeah, in 10. Well, hopefully maybe before then, but 10 years is a good goal.
only because we'll grow and change a lot more. Yes. What do they say? Every 7 years you grow and change a lot.
Let's aim for 7. Yeah.
We'll revisit all these things we talked about.
Well, thank you so much for your time. That was wonderful.
This was so wonderful. I've never done something like this. This is such a great idea. I just am in amazement. I love this. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Thank you for asking me.
Of course. Thank you for listening. You can find our website at faithdeficit.com. Faith Deficit's recorded and produced in Guelph, Ontario at Domo Studios. Music by Jeremy Volz. You can hear more of his music at jeremyvolz.com. If you've been enlightened by this week's episode of Faith Deficit, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and provide an iTunes review. You can also support the program on Patreon, and if you do, thanks so much. I'm Josh Bowman, and this is Faith Deficit.